Hi everyone, this is Nikki here. I am at Fourth. Well, I'm not at the Fourth. I am at the Roadmap conference in Portland, Oregon, which is run by Fourth. And just heading home for the day, but walked outside and there's a Toyota Mirai fuel cell sedan here. So in the interests of having a bit of a play, I thought that it would be a good chance to do a live stream here for you to all enjoy. So I'm going to hand this phone off now to the gentleman who is with me from Toyota. So I'm going to do that. If you just point it in my direction. Okay. So now the Toyota Mirai feels very much like the Prius in terms of its interior sort of setup. It drives like any other car. Some nice touches here that show that it has a Japanese heritage, like the mirrors going down when you select reverse, which is a very Japanese thing. You see it on some more high-end vehicles as well. So unfortunately I can't really test this at any length because we're at an event in Portland and it's the rush hour.
Be the next right turn.
So we're going to go, and one of the things I noticed about driving this is it feels very much like, let me give it a little runny. Now, it feels light, it feels normal to drive until you put your foot on the throttle and you accelerate. The acceleration is a little bit on the slow side. That's because you're driving around a lot of car. You've got the hydrogen fuel cell tanks, you've got the fuel cell stack, you've got the motors. I believe it's a 100 kilowatt motor, unless I am mistaken. Is that correct? 100 kilowatts?
Actually, I don't have the motor specs on me right now.
Okay, I can't remember them off the top of my head. But in terms of the way that the cone is appointed, you've got your touch screen in the centre. These are kind of tactile switches that you would see on the old Toyota, not the old Toyota, the old Chevrolet Volt EV, not EV, plug-in hybrid. I'm sorry, my brain's a bit tired today. So these are all tactile controlled surfaces like the old Chevrolet Volt plug-in hybrid. This reminds me, again, like the current generation Prius and the current generation Prius Prime, it reminds me very much of how much of an influence the previous generation Chevrolet Volt had on Toyota when it made these new vehicles. So we're driving through town right now on the east side of Portland. It's the beginning of the rush hour. And what we notice here is that...
You can stay in this lane.
Oh, we can go in this lane and go around, yeah. And what we're noticing here is that we're getting about 200 miles of range. The tank is about 90% full. And with that, it says 200 miles, which is less than, say, a Tesla or the Chevrolet Bolt EV. Now, obviously, I can't read any of your questions and any of your comments as you're watching. Inside and the back, this is a 4-seat sedan. It is a full-size car. The rear seats do have their own climate control system. They also have heated seats for both passengers at the rear. The air conditioning, it's a pretty hot day, it's just fine. And when you brake, you do feel regenerative braking. Now, there's no very severe braking going on here as you would with some electrified drivetrains, but the level of regen braking here is very similar to the Prius. And I did get a little bit of a chirp there from the tyres, so it shows that there is some torque to be had, but it's definitely being delivered in a very sedate way. But then again, this is a full-size car and it's not designed to be a sports car. And you can lease these in California. and California is about the only place right now that you can lease, and there are some potentials coming for the East Coast, I understand. And of course, in Japan, these are available throughout the country. Toyota is pushing towards a next generation of hydrogen fuel cell sedans looking forwards. And by the time we see the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, Toyota hopes to have the next generation hydrogen fuel cell technology behind this car in operation. Now, at the moment, it must be said that this car is fairly handmade. The fuel cell stack is handmade, large amounts of the hydrogen fuel cell drivetrain are handmade, the vehicles are handmade, and so this vehicle costs Toyota quite a lot of money to make. There's not going to be a lot of profit to be made from this vehicle, which is very much like the first generation Prius. The first generation Prius did not make Toyota any money at all. The second generation Toyota Prius did not make Toyota any money at all. It wasn't until the third generation Toyota Prius came along that Toyota started to turn a profit. And I suspect if hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are to take off in the way that Toyota expects, we're going to see that same kind of quite long time before hydrogen fuel cell vehicles become profitable. Now, personally, the issue that I have with hydrogen fuel cell vehicles is one in which the amount of energy used to create the hydrogen and then turn that hydrogen back into electricity to run the car is a very inefficient way of doing things. And in places where electric vehicles are possible, electric does seem to make the more sensible choice. When Toyota first started looking into hydrogen fuel cell technology, which it has done for many, many years, electric vehicle battery technology wasn't where it was today. And so you did end up with a situation where, you know, you had hydrogen fuel cell technology that was giving better ranges than, say, a battery technology. But that's not the case anymore. You know, this car has less range, or on par with a lot of cars like, you know, the Tesla Model S, Model X, and it's heavy. It has got this executive car feel to it. I don't think necessarily it's a bad feel, and I should note that this is the most accomplished hydrogen fuel cell vehicle I've driven. There is no noise from the fuel cell stack. There's no whirs and clicks which you previously had from the previous generation hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, because at the end of the day this is an electric vehicle. It just gets its power from a hydrogen fuel cell stack, which uses the hydrogen in the tanks, combines that with the oxygen in the air around us to produce electricity and water. And so it is electric and zero tailpipe emissions other than water in this particular context. However, obviously you do have emissions when you are generating the hydrogen. Hydrogen fuel cell fans will say, yes, but you can electrolyze water to produce hydrogen using solar energy. Again, it's very inefficient to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of the hydrogen that is produced today is still produced using basically fracturing of compressed natural gas, and the fracturing process, where you process compressed natural gas to get hydrogen. Now, that obviously does produce some emissions. Does that mean that hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are bad and you shouldn't drive one? Well, there are some edge case uses in which hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are potentially going to have a great future. One of them involves using hydrogen fuel cell stacks as range extenders for electric vehicles. So you'd have a battery pack for around town, and then if you needed to go on a longer distance trip and for some reason you couldn't make use of the charging infrastructure, or the charging infrastructure wasn't available, you would instead use a hydrogen fuel cell to extend your range. And that might be useful in places where hydrogen fueling infrastructure or electric vehicle infrastructure are limited. But until then, I think this is going to be a very interesting transition to watch from Toyota's point of view. I think Toyota hasn't quite got it right, but in terms of whether hydrogen is the vehicle choice of the future. But having said that, this vehicle is the most accomplished hydrogen fuel cell vehicle I've found. Now, if Toyota can figure out a way of making hydrogen cheaply, efficiently, and in a green manner, and can bring the cost of bringing these vehicles to market down, I don't see there being a major issue looking forwards for making these vehicles for fleets or making them for situations where for some reason charging isn't possible. But I'm curious to see what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I will be back in the studio later on, so I'll sit back and read some of the comments. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, keep evolving.